Please, yes, but I know I'm so disappointed. Maybe not. Yeah. Sorry, what's the name? Sorry? Abidin. Okay. Sorry, what's the name? Okay. Good morning, ladies, gentlemen. Welcome to this panel, Negotiating Sexualities, Emerging Perspectives on Transactional Sex and Erotic Identities in Africa. My name is Daniel Chukwemeka. I'll be chairing the panel today. Thank you for being here. So we have so far two presenters, Kazim Adelabu and Mariam Toyin Balogun. So I will briefly introduce them, or maybe each of the presenters before they start. So are you ready? Are you ready? Do you have slides? Yes. Have you sent to me? Oh. Balogun, Barry, are you ready?
I just want to send.
You want to send?
Yes.
If I knew what I damn it,
Yeah, I know, but I'm not the one.
I don't know what I want. This is the address.
Has she received it?
No, she hasn't. I'm just connecting. It's not working. I think that I actually don't have flash, but I'm sending it online now. It's just doing that as well.
We should give you flash, please. Flash.
Yes, sorry.
What's the email address? What's the email address?
Just for the that's what we want.
Lagos Studies. Sorry, what's the email address?
Not really.
Lagos Studies Association 9.
Mom is still loading. I don't know what's happening with that.
Can you? Where is yours? So that I'll send to her.
I'm attaching it now. I'm online.
You got that address. The same line.
Yes, I got the address.
Okay. Sorry. Hello. The mic. I don't think it's working. It's supposed to be projecting. Okay, so the first presenter is hello. Sorry, is the mic working? It's supposed to be projecting. It's not. Okay. The first presenter is Abidin David Amodu. He holds a degree in English and Literary Studies from Federal University, Oyekiti. His research interests include Black queer sexualities, migration studies, film studies, social media discourses, and drag performances. His works have largely focused on queer spaces and intimacies in the Nigerian context. His works have appeared in Gender Questions, Linguistic and Literature Review, Archives of Behavior, Quarterly Review of Film and Video, and the Journal of Homosexuality. David, over to you. You have 12 minutes. Okay. Sense.
Yes, I have.
Do you know shifts?
I just sit down to come to check. No.
Continue. Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abidin Amodu, and the title of my presentation today is The Practice of Intimacy, Erotic Economics, and Speculative Pragmatism in Queer Nigerian Landscapes. So, introduction, I said sex and intimacy are crucial aspects of human and animal existence. That is, as human beings, sex and intimacy are things that are intrinsic part of our existence, except for religious or social reasons or any other personal commitment, that human beings will not seek to gain intimacy or have sexual relations. But sexual relations are not always heterosexual in nature. There are sexual relations and intimacy-seeking behaviors that are homocentric or that has to do with same-sex sexual expressions. And for queer people in Nigeria, I said it becomes crucial for queer people living in queer coastal communities like Nigeria, where state and non-state actors intensify their policing of same-sex relationships. So in order to navigate landscapes of sexuality, landscapes of intimacy, in places where the rights to such like expressions are limited, what we have is that queer people in Nigeria seek to devise other means of connecting, other means of seeking intimacy that are clandestine and that is not so glaring to the general public. Because in Nigeria, we know that being gay in Nigeria is punishable by death in 12 of 18 northern states in Nigeria, where the Sharia law is implemented. And in other states, and I mean in other parts of Nigeria, it is punishable for up to 14 years jail term, and membership to associations and protection of queer people is punishable for up to 10 years imprisonment. So let's go to the operational definition of terms so that we know what those big terms are. We have the freighting of intimacy, just as we have drawn from logistics and supply chain. We have freighting that has to do with the movement of goods and services. So we have now commodified intimacy to be something that is freighted, something that is moved from one place to another, from those who did it to those who get it. Then we have speculative pragmatism, which in the context of queer studies refers to the adaptive strategies that individuals use to navigate and negotiate their intimate lives. So those things, those strategies they adopt are called speculative pragmatism. Then we have erotic economics, which is a theoretical framework that explores how sexual and intimate relationships intersect with economic principles and practice. In the course of this presentation, we'll get to understand how these terms intersect. Then, so let's save our time. Let's go into the discussion. Then I conceptualized queer spaces in Nigeria because this presentation is part of a bigger project in queer spaces in Nigeria. So we have queer spaces, we have the physical space, and under it, we have the semi-private or the shared space, we have the personal, we have the private community, and on virtual spaces, we have dating apps, social media, private chat, and groups and communities. We get to understand the functionalities of these spaces in the navigation of queer sexualities in Nigeria. So then we talk about physical spaces. Physical spaces are important sites of connection, community formation, and attunement among queer Nigerians. Private spaces, these are spaces, when we talk about the physical space, despite the law, there are still some physical spaces in the country that permit queer people to utilize them, that permit queer people to use those spaces so that they can seek intimacy or get intimacy. So these spaces they are usually called physical spaces, and when relationships, which typically begin in the virtual space, which we will get to, these relationships transition to the physical spaces. So these physical spaces are the sites of happening where intimacy is consummated. So we are more on physical spaces, which includes the participants for this research. They said they feel more comfortable in physical spaces that are queer accepting. This includes parties, orgies, and other queer-friendly venues. Then we have the virtual space, which I want us to pay attention to. So virtual spaces help to facilitate important connections among queer people because they offer anonymity. And anonymity is perhaps or arguably the most important ingredient in negotiating queer identities in hostile places. The queer person needs to be anonymous first before the relationship transcends to the physical space where the anonymity is broken and the intimacy is consummated. So in Nigeria, the two categories of virtual spaces that are used by queer Nigerians are dating apps and social media. Next slide, please. So we talked about the threatening of intimacy via dating apps. The two major dating apps that are used are Grindr and Tinder. Grindr is an exclusively gay male dating app, while Tinder is open to both the LGBT community and the straight community. Let's move on. So this is what the typical Grindr page looks like. This is a picture by Link 2019. You have the grid, those tiles, those pictures are grid. Why I said it offers anonymity, you may be wondering, these are people's spaces. People do not always use their own pictures. So it is during communication that you get to know the person who you are speaking to. And if you look at the other side, you will see the details of the person. So you can always sort intimacy. What I mean by sorting intimacy is that using these filters, there are filters and there are tribes. The users can always, seek or connect to people who have like interests or like minds. So what are the infrastructural features? There is something we call infrastructures of sex or infrastructures of intimacy. These are infrastructures, physical or otherwise, that have been put in place to enable people to connect, to have intimate relationships. Those are the infrastructures of intimacy. You can refer to Barry Adams 2010 for that. So what are the infrastructural features of Grindr? We have anonymity, geolocation. I want us to pay attention to geolocation. All dating apps that I mentioned, that is Tinder and Grindr, they use geolocation. People from human geography or spatial geography, they'll tell you that geolocation has to do with connecting to the global positioning system, GPS. So when a user is connected, the user is only able to connect within a certain range. For instance, you're in the University of Lagos. If a Grindr user wants to connect, the Grindr user is most likely to see people within a certain perimeter. When you move to another location or move to another perimeter, outside that perimeter, you're able to connect with people within that perimeter. So that is geolocation. Then we move on to Tinder. The most outstanding feature of Tinder is the swipe logic, which Thomas and Hancock call the swipe logic. What is specific about the swipe logic? You can see that there are two pictures there. You have rope and like. So if you are a user and you like the picture you are seeing, and face cards, and to the face card, and some detail. If you like, you swipe right. If you don't like, you swipe left. So we move on to the pricing of intimacy on social media app. We've talked about dating applications. Now we have social media app. These three social media apps, I'm very sure we all know them. We have Facebook, we got WhatsApp, and we have X, which is to be formerly known as Twitter. So there are affordances, infrastructures that these applications have that enable them to be usable. You can see that not all applications are here, but there are affordances. This, if you look at the screen, you see the affordances they have that enables them to be usable by queer Nigerians in seeking and gaining intimacy. Then we question this transactional sex, erotic economics of dating and social media. You know, we said within the framework of sex delivery systems, which I've mentioned earlier, dating apps and social media provide a variety of affordances that enable transactional sex. Transactional sex, in the essence, that when sex is based on transaction, is based on give and take. What can you get? What can I get? It is transactional sex is not always about economic gains. Transactional sex can be about intimate gains, romantic gains, and sexual pleasure. It's not just always about money. It could be anything. When we have this intimacy, what does party A seek to get, and what does party B? And in cases where there are multiple parties in the same sexual relations. So we said anonymity and discretion. You know, when people book for sex, because like dating apps are usually classified as hookup applications. When people book for sex or book for intimacy on dating apps, they are anonymous until you have gotten to the stage where you want to pay. That is when the anonymity is broken. Then we have secure communication, like WhatsApp has end-to-end features. So the chat I'm sending, if I am party A and I'm sending a chat to party B, the chat I am sending is what? It is end-to-end encrypted. End-to-end encryption means that it goes directly to that person. No third party has access to it. That is why it is. And there is also access to wider networks like what we have on social media. We have social media communities and we have social media groups. Then, so that is, next slide, please. So that is the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. So the next presenter, sorry, if you have any question, you can give them after the presentations so that we take them all together. The next presenter is Mariam, who is currently a PhD student at the Institute of African Studies, specialized in gender studies at the University of Ibadan. She holds a bachelor's degree in communication and language arts and a master's degree in gender studies from the University of Ibadan. Her research interests include sexual assaults, staff-student relationships, sexual exploitation, transactional sex, policies, intervention, and implementation. Mariam, you have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Since I don't need to do the proper introduction again. My topic is on poverty and transactional sex among the youth in selected urban communities in Ibadan. From the picture, we can depict that the place that is shown behind the topic is actually one of the selected areas in the city in Ibadan. It is an urban slum community simply because they have some kind of unique features that we could say, okay, these are urban communities. One, they have highly populated area in that place, and that place is called Bere. So if we are familiar with what they normally say about Ibadan, they will say Ibadan, oh, Molayifo. So this place is actually the core area when you enter Ibadan city. So, and majorly, if you want to talk about the people of Ibadan, it can be found in this setting. Ibadan, from this study, can be categorized into three. One, in terms of the age, the size, and the population. According to the historical of Ibadan, this place happens to be one of the biggest and the largest place where you can find the real indigenous of Ibadan. As a result, many of these people that live in this community, I could say they are very poor in terms of they lack access to many of the basic facilities. In terms of the electricity, food, healthcare system, they are not available in these places. So that is why I'm looking at some of these places in terms of the food. We can all say that the economy of Nigeria, many people doesn't have access to food, and they were looking for means to survive. So transactional sex that I will be focusing on in this aspect happens to be the survivor aspect. Many people engage in this transactional sex just for a living, to get food on their table, to care for their family and all that. And at the same time, while looking at this study, I tried to explore a qualitative aspect, because over the time I passed through these areas on a daily basis, and I've seen from my own personal experience how transactional sex are being engaged in this area. Firstly, if you look at the picture again, you could see that there's some motor vehicles moving around that place. There's some markets with umbrellas and all that. And if you look at some of the things that they are selling here, some of the goods there, they are not up to 5,000. Some people put some kind of small perishables trying to sell some things. While there are some others who stand around, they're looking for people that they could pickpocket some kind of aspect in order to sell. So these are some of the major things that you can say that some men in that area could do. How about the women living in this aspect? The only business that they could do in some of these places are just to engage in some kind of sex in order to collect money and feed themselves. So some of these are part of the reason why I just have to look at, okay, this thing occurs every day and it's a norm over there. So as a result, I was like, okay, how can my research come in, probably in order to look at the aspect of the policy aspect, probably governments can look into some of these things. But unfortunately, during the election time, these are the places that government officials, the aspirants, they go to take some of these people, give them some money for the election to snatch the ballot boxes and all that. Those are for the men. How about the women? The only thing that they could do is just to engage in some kind of transactional sex. And many of them, because we all know that to get an education, to go to school, it has to do with money. But these are the people that they don't have money for food, talk less of going to school. Many of them drop out of school. But my study will be looking at the apprentices in this area. And if you look at what the reason why I picked the urban setting, I actually didn't just put the urban slum areas only because they are poor people and all that. And there's another aspect that I actually look into. There are some other people that the parents that they feel like, okay, we have female children, we don't want them to engage in sex and all that because they all know the implications of all those things. They rather put them into kind of trainings that they could, vocational training that they could learn in order to get money. So these are the areas where I'm picking, aside this Bere area, I'm looking at the Ogunpa aspect, the Ogunpa, Okepad area, where there are some major cities, where there are some major markets in Ibadan. And the places are usually crowded with lots of people. It's not that people were going there to buy some goods and because they don't have money. Well, some of them were looking at pickpocketing, some are actually trying to learn some trades in order to get money. But the female apprentices, when they go to these places to learn and all that, after the closing out of the day, because these are part of the my research, the non-participant approach that I observe what is going on in that area. So after the closing hour of this place, most of the young girls of 13, 14, and the above, up to 15, they usually stay back after the closing hour. And many of these markets close between the hours of 6:30. So we see many of the shops closed down by that time. And at this time, this place that you are seeing on the screen.
Tell her this. Tell her to. Slide what? Slide what?
Slide 1. So many of these places, after the close out of the day, those girls, of course, the place is usually routed, like times 4 of this population you are seeing. And at the same time, there are no street lights at that time, and you see girls hanging around looking for who to transact sex with, get money and all that, for them to go back home. So this has been the norm, and nobody discussed this among them. Let me go back. Let me go to the my research objectives.
Tell her this slide.
Slide 6, please. Yes, because of the time. My research objective is to explore the Have you seen it? To explore the demographic and risk factors of female apprentices in transactional sex in selected urban urban slum areas, which are what I've mentioned earlier before, the Bere, Okepa, Ogunpa, Gbeni aspects of the real cities in Ibadan. The research objective is to identify places of engagement of transactional sex, that is where the sex are actually taking place. Because these are the people, I'm sorry, I did not have the kind of the houses that some of these people where they live, to show that how can people be living in this area. And the third objective is to identify the motivating factors that these female apprentices, that they actually try to say, okay, they want to engage in the transactional sex. The methodology, like I said, it is a non-participant observation, the in-depth interviews, and the focus group discussion. And I actually want to say this, that this research is still ongoing. It has not completed, so I'm still taking research field work in this area. And only 20 female apprentices were sampled using purposive sampling techniques, the shadowing, and the snowballing. The shadowing is because these people, sometimes if I try to go to them to ask questions, we all know that these are personal things and very, very sensitive. So more like I need to take my time to observe and try to follow their patterns, and also to gain their trust in order to get this kind of information. So it takes time, and that's why I could not get the real, the largest respondents at this moment. And the snowballing, after I gained some people's trust and all that, so I will try, after I interview them, I could ask that, can you tell me any of your friends that would help me with this kind of interview? So some granted, and while some, when I go to them, they would not. So that is, and another thing is that because these places, they are more of indigenous area or in Ibadan. So, and many of them, because I don't want to have to act like probably because they did not go to school, I need to give them that kind of confidence to express themselves in any language that they feel they can speak to. So many of the data that was generated were in Yoruba language, so I have to transcribe them to the English for the audience to understand. And like I said, the study area, excuse me, the next slide. The study area is an urban city, like I said, and these places that I mentioned happens to be, there is something that is very peculiar about Ibadan. While you were mentioning that, okay, where do you come from and all that, as an Ibadan indigent, the only thing that they could know where you came from is to have that, where is your Agbole? And Agbole means, in terms of the English, Agbole means the slum areas, because they assume that there must be a particular place where your family originates from in Ibadan. probably in terms of the business that your family lines have been doing. So they have it as an agbole. And like I said, Agbola 1987, who has been the major researcher in Ibadan on this kind of research on slum areas, categorize the areas in Ibadan in terms of the age, that is the historical aspect of how Ibadan were originated, the location and the size. So I've mentioned some of the similarities about the research. This kind of help me to go to the results. That's slide 10. So in terms of the research objective 1, which investigated the demographic and risk factors of female apprentices' engagement in transactional sex in selected communities area, that is the Albany, Okepad, Bere, among others. What I have observed as a result of these girls that engage in transactional sex, and I'm sorry, I didn't mention my own terms of, or the general aspects of what transactional sex actually means. Transactional sex in this term is a mutual agreement of having sex with an opposite sex. You are not forced to do it. And at the same time, they assume that, okay, it is a boyfriend-girlfriend thing. So, and this thing is actually different from a prostitute, where you think that you have a client, or you have to demand, okay, before I can now, oh yeah, bring money. So then why I ask some of these questions, the age difference I actually picked from the demographic factors happens to be the respondent from 13 years to 25 years. And some of these apprentices, I classify them into 3. The new apprentices, that those that just started learning, and the junior ones, probably they have started within 6 months, and there are some others, the senior ones, who have started for the past years, but they are still learning. Some of these senior female apprentices, they happen to be those ones that, as a result of money, they're supposed to have, there's this term they have in their own term that they call it freedom. That is just like when you go to school, you graduate from learning. But in their own aspect, they call it freedom. So if you are learning and you have not been, after some specific agreements between your family that brought you to learn, there's a kind of financial aspect that is involved. That's okay, after you have learned, this is how much the initial payment you're going to get. And after you have learned, before I can allow you to go to establish your own business, these are the things I'm going to collect. But fortunately for the senior female apprentices, some of them, their parents have not come to settle their bosses who they are learning from. So as a result, until they pay them, their bosses will not release them. So they continue to learn. So these are the senior ones. And unfortunately, these senior ones happen to be the ones that train or initiate the junior and the new ones into the transactional sex as a means of survival. So in this aspect, there are some kind of class in terms of the age differences. The family background, some of the participants that live, from my findings, I could say that some of the participants that live with their parents, they actually have some kind of, some certain of morals that, okay, they know that if they get home probably too late, they'll be challenged and all. While there are some that they live with family relatives, they can stay as long as they want, and there's no security life. While I interviewed some of them that, okay, where do you normally, in terms of, okay, please don't let me go there because I'm still coming back to the okay, let me quickly rush through. So the research objective, the risk factors, they contact, some of them are prone to contacting sexually transmitted diseases, because when I asked some of them, how do you protect yourself and all that, they believe that, why do I need to protect myself? Some of them, it was a direct question, and I said that, no, we trust our boyfriend. So there's no proper use of condoms and all sorts of protective measures. They just do it like that. Okay, what are the things that you use after some mentioned the kind of contraceptive pills that they use for the age of 13 years out of school. So some of these are part of what is trending in this area. And they learn all this through the senior female apprentices that they learn. Then the research objectives to identify places of engagement. Some of these places happen to be in the markets after the closing tower. There are some benches, the chairs that they place by the entrance of the market just after the closing. Since there is no light, it is easier for them to explore all sorts of sexual. From what I could have here, when I have some of them out, where do you normally meet and all that. So you could see from the result that some of them alalẹ ni a máa ń pàdé ní ibi tí a bá ti fi ìpàdé wa sí, things like that. So the second finding, which I actually observe as well, that these are, if you go out in Ibadan on Sunday, you see different kind of, and all these guys normally works in group. If you see them, they wear some kind of different dresses, short dresses. They move in groups, and more like they're trying to look for new customers. While I have some of them, they're like, how can you be a young girl like this? It's every Sunday of the thing that we usually have sex, and apart from the normal, so Sundays are known for sex and all that. So other places are clubs where they have it. Then street parties, carnivals. Unfortunately, since my research is still going on, at this point, the Megugo Festival, which is known as one of the masquerade festivals in Ibadan, it will soon start. And these were things that usually be live, that some of those people that follow the Egungun, it's part of showing power and negotiating sex on the road while they were following Egungun also. So the transactional sex happens to be in such places. Then the research objective, 3 motivating factors of female apprentices into this. Some of them are surprised when they said, this is the final one. So some of them, they said, okay, we usually have this sex because they see it as a form of commitment. How can you have a boyfriend and you are not having sex? And at the same time, so it shows that you don't want somebody else to snatch your husband and to show some kind of loyalty. So they have that kind of, and like I said, the senior apprentices actually expose them to some of these things and how they could protect themselves and all that. And the financial control, some of them, I could say that from the educational aspect of people that probably they have an SSC or that some of them happens to be the one that I could classify their own thinking in terms of, okay, they have some basic knowledge of education. They would say that, okay, they are engaged in this, the money they collect from such transactional sex, they're actually saving it in order to establish their own business. And at the same time, they don't want to be like the senior ones who were retained that their parents were not responsible to pay them so that they could free themselves when the time comes. So some of these things, and I would like to drop my conclusion here. And since it's still going on, I am sorry I could not be able to give some recommendation. And thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. I'm sorry to cut you short. I have been informed that 3 other presenters are actually available on Zoom. So we have to make it fast, make it quick, and 12 minutes for each presenter. The next presenter, I don't know if he's ready. Kazim, can you hear us, please? Kazim,
hello.
Are you there? Okay.
Hello,
so,
I'm there.
Okay, good. I will introduce you and you have 12 minutes to present.
All right.
That's okay. Okay, good. So Kazim, Dr. Kazim is a senior lecturer in the Department of English at the University of Ibadan, where he teaches African literature and aspects of English literature. His research interests include African poetry, post-apartheid literature and medicine. His papers have appeared in African Literature Today, the Journal of Commonwealth Literature, the Journal of African Literature Association, and the Research in African Literature's Journal. He is a fellow of African Humanities Program and visiting scholar, Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences. So Dr. Kazim, you have 12 minutes. Do you have any slides you want to share?
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I have slides to share, but looks like I have trouble, loading them on. But Can I? Hello?
Can hear you.
Can I go ahead without the slide?
Yeah.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. The title of my paper, Eros, Gratification, and Power in Duika's novels. Obviously, is a study in, text. Unlike previous presentations that deal with society. And let me say that this is actually a rereading of an earlier work that I did. To launch into the paper itself, I like to begin by observing that there's been so much controversy about the area I'm trying to engage with, which is homosexuality. Revolving around whether it's African or is un-African. And moving beyond scholarly works to political spaces, social circles, and the rest. But since I'm limiting myself to, textual studies, I like also to observe that in the representation of sexuality in African literature, homosexuality has been marginalized until very recently. Now that it's being moved to the center of discourse, most of the studies around homosexuality has been political to a very large extent, and when I saw the idea of a transactional, it's excited my interest, and I felt that, oh, what a nice way to look at this. Partly because most transactional, discourses have always focused on male-female, sexuality, heterosexuality. Now, in this particular work, what I try to do is to see how desire for sex, gratification for that sex, turns out to be a kind of a power game. And hello?
Can hear you,
sir.
So I now try to look at two novels by a South African novelist, Selo Duika, 13 Cents and The Quiet Violence of Dreams. Novels that deal with homosexuality. And essentially, these works ordinarily try to illustrate the coming out of people from closets to the public. It's been read from that angle. It's been read from masculinist angle, whereby, emphasis is on how masculinity is subverted and male characters, especially homosexual male characters, are feminized. While these have been very, prominent in the engagement of these novels, these works, these existing studies have totally ignored the metaphor of power in the relationship between people of same-sex orientation. In trying to analyze this particular angle, I borrow from Michel Foucault's idea of a theory of power, which is about the fact that power is, unstable, that power is invites resistance, And of course, I complement that with a Marxist theory of power that sees power as derived primarily from economic position. So now, going to the text. In these two texts, we have the protagonists who are involved in direct transactional sex, economic one. That is, they are actually prostituting themselves. But one thing that is very interesting about this representation is that quite unlike what we normally see in the transactional sex prostitution between male and female individuals as very prevalent in society and in text, we now see that, power is deployed differently. Power is appropriated differently in the novels. Now, the protagonist in The Quiet Violence of Dreams, who happens to be Shepo, is involved in, massage business where, people come around and ask for massage, and gradually they graduate to, real intercourse. And what do we see in this representation? Basically, we now see that the one that is being penetrated, that is offering body for money, is the one that is now in control of power level. Now, what do we see? We now see a situation whereby the one that is being penetrated is the one now dictating terms to the one that is giving money, thereby, subverting that popular notion that the customer is the king. Now, the customer that is paying, that is ordinarily privileged, that has economic wherewithal, that is prepared to pay, is now at the mercy of the one that is selling the sex. This is one of the several instances. Now, you now have, then of course, you also now have a situation that is borrowing from Michel Foucault's idea that while this happens to be the more prevalent thing in the narrative, you now have a situation whereby people of similar status with the guy that is selling sex, Shepo, people of similar, okay, sorry, in this case, not Shepo, Azure in the second text. You now have people of the same status, of the same class, now also having sex in a transactional manner with Azure. But in this case, Azure now cooperates with them in a way that does not suggest that he has power over them, that he has to dictate the terms of engagement, he has to dictate whether he's going to give them pleasure or not. So we see that, that power changes. The configuration of power, the deployment of power now changes. Then another very vital one is instances where we have women who are lesbians and who are also going for massage, interacting with a male provider of sex. Of course, this ordinarily looks like a non-homosexual relation. Yes, but in one of such examples where we have an orgy, where we have male, female, a group of them, about 5 or 6 of them, having sex together, we now have a situation whereby the women are placed at a greater, at a point where they have to beg. They have to beg excessively, more than is usual. Ordinarily, in normal situation, it's men that tend to beg for sex from women. Yeah. But in this particular scenario, we now have a situation whereby is the women that are begging men for sex. And women use that, men use that to their own advantage. So sometimes they decide to gratify the sex, the desire, sometimes they deny it. And so that provides another perspective to the subversion of power in that narrative. And so what I just try to do is to try to show, contrary to an earlier reading, to now show that, sex in transactional homosexual relation is not just about satisfying the flesh. It's not just about getting pleasure. It also involves, denying pleasure. And it's essentially undergirded by, the consciousness that I have power over my partner. Thank you very much.
What is connected? Thank you, Dr. President. Thank you, Dr.
Hello.
I will call on the next presenter because we are out. The next presenter is I don't know if she's ready. Okay, Mara J, you will introduce yourself clearly. Okay, so are you ready, present? Yes. Jane Mara, are you there? Can you hear us?
Please, I can hear you. Yes,
Okay.
Daniel. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I will introduce you and you have 12 minutes to present.
It's okay. Thank you.
So, Jane Mara is human is the current plan of the foundation of the size of the human race of nearly all of the job. It's about in the old west of the States. She graduated from the University of Nigeria from the Department of English and Literary Studies, and she also earned a master's degree from the National Open University of Nigeria. In philology and genetics, she's currently in a PhD in English development. Research interests phonology and genetics, social linguistics, language technology, research and writing. And she's currently a registrar and lecturer in the use of English means at the Institute of Transactional Life in Africa, in Africa. So you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel Tukuma. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity. I'm glad to be here. Having been introduced, the topic of my presentation is the place of transactional sex in African culture and identity. Transactional sex, broadly defined as the exchange of sexual services for material benefits, money, or other forms of compensation, is a practice deeply rooted in various societies worldwide, including Africa. Understanding the place of transactional sex in African society requires an exploration of historical, economic, and social context, as well as the examination of its impact on both individual and collective identity. The aims and objectives of this paper to explore, to understand how transactional sex has been historically perceived and practiced within various African cultures, with particular reference to the culture and identity of the Mbudi people of Imo State, Nigeria, West Africa, to investigate the cultural and social significance of transactional sex, to explore contemporary views and attitude towards transactional sex, to analyze how transactional sex influences and is influenced by African culture, value, and society, to consider the implications of these practices for policy, social program, and gender relations. The research questions: how has the concept and practice evolved in African culture and identity over time? To what extent are historical, cultural norms, and gender dynamics, socio-economic factors, and contemporary issues contributing to transactional sex in Africa? What are the health risks associated with transactional sex? How are these being addressed in African communities? What intervention could potentially mitigate the negative impacts of transactional sex in African culture and identity? Having collected the data from 20 undergraduate and graduate students of different universities from different backgrounds, Igbo, Yoruba, Manyamu, Gwagi, Hausa, having collected the data from different students from 18 years to 45 years, analyzing the data, we all agree that the transactional sex has no place in African culture and identity. However, they agreed that transactional sex within African culture and identity can be attributed to several factors, which can be examined through historical, socio-economic, and cultural lenses, and so on and so forth. There are many factors, but due to the time, we're just going to talk about three. We talk about historical factor. We talk about colonial influence. During the colonial era, socio-economic structures were disrupted, leading to the commodification of various aspects of life, including relationships. When we now talk about commodification relationship, transactional sex coming. Now we talk about the imposition of cash economy and the introduction of new social norms, alternated traditional forms of social exchange and relationship. We talk about slave trade. Slave trade, the history of the transatlantic and Arab slave trade also had an impact, as the practice involved the exploitation of African women, often leading to transactional sexual relationship as a means of survival and cohesion. Then we talk about economic factors, social factors, modern influences, and then we talk about interventions. When we talk about these factors, actually transactional sex, when we talk about the the place of transactional sex in African culture and identity, we all agree that it has no place in African culture and identity. Rather, some factors, a lot of things within the years has really made this transactional sex to come within the African context, and it's there and it's growing. Yes, we admit that the transactional sex has come in and it's really growing within the African culture and identity. So we talk about intervention. How can we talk about to stop transactional sex in African society, especially in Umbudi Oru West local government area of Imo State, is a multi-faceted approach. Is necessary, addressing the root cause and providing sustainable alternatives. Here are some sustainable alternatives we can suggest or we can imbibe. We talk about sufficient family support and orientation. When it comes to sufficient family support and orientation, you see that in modern family setting, you talk about single mothers that are proud about that, single fathers that are proud about it. But this is modern African society. When we now talk about the traditional African society, we are the grandmother, we are the mother, we are the father, we are the aunties, we are the uncles are involved. We are, all these people are involved in training the children, in bringing up the child. You see that it is very difficult for them to deviate from the ethics, from the values, from the norms they have gained growing up from these traditional African society. When we talk about modern African society, where you have the single mothers that are there comfortably, you don't question them, single fathers, you find out that children don't have this sufficient family support, emotionally, economically, parental engagement in the lives of children, and then also education of the parents in the danger of these transactional sex and what this transactional sex could do to the next generation. We talk about economic support, proper orientation, education on risk and consequences of this transactional sex, values and ethics, life skill training, sex education. These could be different ways where we can come in to say, by doing this, we can sustain the reduction or total eradication of transactional sex. In conclusion, addressing transactional sex in African society requires comprehensive and sustainable solution that tackles the underlying social, economic, cultural, and legal factors by empowering individuals, promoting gender equality, improving access to education and healthcare, and fostering community engagement. Transactional sex can be significantly reduced or eradicated. Collaboration and commitment from all sectors of society are crucial to achieving long-term change. Thank you.
Thank you. So the five questions of today is just achieved who is an early career specializing in discourse analysis, mathematics, and experience that in states and best sites and maintain a national degree from the University of Language in 2004, master's and degree and PhD from State University in 2021. It's also in a said in professional and administrative persons while very interested and also at the administrative investors and economic development. As the researcher, we found our basic economics and peace and medical discussions as they appear in literary and non-literary texts. His research outputs have been published in journals such as Indonesian Journal of English Language Studies, Journal of Functional Democracy and Cognitive Behavior Therapy, among other African and Nigerian investigative journals. He has attended and presented as a professional and academic conference in and outside Nigeria. So, Dr. Chidu, we have 12 minutes.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My topic of presentation is the intersection of sexual economics and erotic dissonance in emerging sexual market spaces. We understand transactional sex to refer to sexual relationships motivated by the gain accruing from it. And this has been on the increase, irrespective of religious and cultural prohibition of such ways of life in Africa and Nigeria in particular. The sexual economy seems to benefit the participants, even if it's for just a temporary period. The lasting effects, especially on the female counterparts, could be very alarming. This ranges from unwanted pregnancies, contracting of STDs, to distorted or aborted dreams. But despite the dangers associated with transactional sex, the Nigerian sex industry seems to be on the increase, stimulated by its numerous sites of engagement, such as WhatsApp, X, formerly Twitter, Badoo, TikTok, Tango, Bigo Lives, and many others. This study is an attempt at exploring the major stimulators of transactional sex by looking at the intersection of sexual economics and erotic dissonance in emerging sexual marketplaces. Sexual economics, as used in this research, refers to the application of economic principles to the understanding of sexual behaviors, relationships, and markets. It involves a study of the social, cultural, and biological assets that make someone attractive and desirable. This relates to sexual capital. The social arena, where individuals negotiate sexual relationships, attention, and affection relating to sexual markets. The balance between individuals seeking sexual encounters and those offering them. This relates to the concepts of demand and supply. The unequal distribution of resources, power, and benefits in sexual relationships. This refers to sexual exploitation. And of course, sexual entrepreneurship, which relates to the creation of new sexual markets, services, and products. Erotic dissonance, on the other hand, refers to the tension that arises when an individual's sexual desires, values, or beliefs contradict their own moral principles or self-image. This dissonance can lead to a feeling of guilt, anxiety, or discomfort. A good example of this could be an individual who believes in gender equality, but yields to sexual objectification, or someone who is straight, but is made to engage in same-sex sexual encounter motivated by gifts, financial, or other related considerations. This, therefore, brings us to the major thrust of this paper, which is to examine how transactional sexual participants are able to resolve the tension between what they desire and what they get. That is to say, how does economic consideration and other possible benefits move sexual participants to cohabit without actually having affection? How does it make them to conjugate without emotion? And how does it propel them to love without loving? To address these concerns, the work is guided by 3 specific objectives, which include to study some hybrid transactional sexual spaces and the dominant activities that characterize them, to investigate the impact of sexual economics on transactional sex, and then, of course, to determine how language is used in attempts to resolve the tension between desirability and availability in transactional sexual spaces. The data for this study, as a matter of fact, the study is a work in progress, but the data are drawn from the virtual sites of the sexual engagements, referred to as dating sites mentioned above, and subjected to a socio-semiotic investigation following some analytic categories provided in Crace and Lewin's 2001 socio-semiotic multimodal approach to textual analysis. And then, of course, transitivity, an aspect of Halliday and Mathizen's 2-4 systemic functional grammar. The idea behind the use of these 2 theories is that we intend to look at transactional sex on these sexual sites from a multimodal perspective. We want to look at the textual modes and the visual modes, which includes the individuals who engage in these, certain emojis and emoticons that they use to express their intentions. And of course, the textual mode will have to do with the speeches, the speeches like spoken text and then other written text. Because this has to do with the mind, we have also decided to adopt Halliday's transitivity system. One of the analytic categories in Halliday's transitivity theory is the concept of censor. The concept of censor, the individual involved is labeled censor. And this will allow us to do a kind of psychoanalytic reading of the discourse participants. The study findings reveals that these visual sites of sexual engagement are characterized by highly erotic scenes and the use of erotic language, semi-nude and nude encounters, exchange of money for virtual engagements, and in some instances, physical engagement. The study equally reveals that a major motivating factor for engagement isn't affection, but monetary and other related gains. It is equally observed that the tension between desirability and availability is partially resolved through euphemistic and legitimizing terms, such as hostel. Instead of terming it prostitution, one calls it hostel. Hostel would mean someone who is not lazy ordinarily, and it is in the positive plane. Within the Igbo word for hostel will be Ibambo, and it is something that everyone would applaud, that someone is trying to fend for himself or herself. So the use of hustle here is a term that intends to euphemize and legitimize the act of prostitution. We also have other terms like gifter. For instance, gifter is used by the participants in Bigo Live for someone paying for sexually related services. The person is labeled gifter. My live, this phrase, L-I-V-E, refers to a live video hosted by a sex vendor where they expose some erogenous zones before their followers, but it is simply euphemized as my live. And then, of course, private. Private refers to a situation where people make payments to have a one-on-one encounter with the sex vendor in a complete nude state. This could happen on WhatsApp, and then it is euphemistically termed private. So we are of the view that since a major motivating factor for transactional sex is finances and other related considerations, we think that a responsive government which provides for the masses through employment opportunities and makes formal education accessible to all will reduce the alarming growth of the transactional sex industry in Africa and Nigeria in particular. Thank you for your audience.
So we are out of time already, but just 5 minutes. There's any more question. The papers are really interesting. I understand that many have questions. So I am interested in lots of David's concept of the pricing of intimacy. And I believe it's a methodology that you can look for into something that can come out as a full-fledged academic theory that can be theorized for the academy. Because the papers we have listened today have one thing in common, which can still be worked on and we can look further. in terms of making sure that the papers are grounded in specific theories, not just external theories, but the work that the presenters are already doing. Grounded in the sense that the focus of the papers need to be very much clear to the reader, to the audience, and also I'm thinking about transactional sex, which is a concept that can be enhanced further. Because like Dr. David said, it is not just about the exchange of money. There are other things that can change. So the concept of transactional sex is not just about financial transaction. So that concept needs to be grounded in papers. So when the so Miriam's presentation is also, obtained from the paper. So I believe that she can also find a way to make sure that her presentation approaches the broader socio-economic challenges that need to be addressed holistically. Those challenges that need to, because our presentation talks about the intersection of poverty and sexual sex. So I believe that one thing that she can pay attention to is to show that when it comes to corruption, for example, and poverty, and also development generally in Africa and Nigeria in particular, these things are usually strong as simply different forms that are inherent. So the presenters need to also address the fact that they are not inherent. The form is not inherent. There are certain socio-economic factors that lead to poverty, and also the concept of corruption, and also the concept of underdevelopment, because these are the factors that contribute generally to these factors. And the part of the issue of transactional sex that is not like presented. So Dr. I think Dr. Yes, I think the one that talked about Celebritas novel and Dr. Adela, right? So he's the only presenter that looks at these concepts from the perspective of literature, what it calls homophilic novels. Yes, so these are novels that deal with the purpose of same-sex love of Israel. So I appreciate the presenting paper. So you can also program us in your paper how the homophilic novels challenge stereotypes, and also for ground insights into the complexities of love, desire, and power in contemporary society. So Dr. Jane Mora, a presentation on the place of transactional sex in African culture and identity is a little bit controversial in the sense that there is a claim in the paper about how transactional sex has no place in African identity, but rather proceeds from various interactions with economic, historical, and social factors in the modern African society, which lead to deviation in norms and behavior. So I would like Mora to address further, not here, of course, what she meant by African identity. There is such thing as African identity. Meanwhile, she explained that what she refers to African identity is a combination of various interactions with economic, social, and historical factors. In other words, if that's the case, Carol's transactional sex, which she also refers to as having no place in African identity, can't it also evolve from such kinds of interaction? And again, when we use the term Africa, we should also place in evidence noting that Africa is homogeneous. It's not a homogeneous community or society. We can refer specifically to Nigeria, and even within Nigeria, there are some nations that we can refer to, and that's why I think papers like the one by Miriam and some other presenters that focus their analysis on a particular democracy also, such papers are also contribution to expand. So, and
just like every other people, including that of justice. We also talk about sexual economics, right? So in this paper, we look at the understand how we can understand the intersection of sexual economics and erotic dissonance, what's called erotic dissonance in emerging sexual market spaces. How we require nuanced analysis of economic, psychological, and social factors. So thank you to the presenters and we'll take one or two questions.
I want to look at the areas. You mentioned the word aggregate. We were talking about that means you made a lot of I'm talking about transactional sex. Transactional sex is a people not to sex of two ways. The what? Either the same data, what? Two or more people. I need a bigger object. So, since transactional sex, you are trying to explain your design back against two individuals. You need to consider your research methodology when trying to report. You talked about using participant observation. Well, not participant observation rather than observation. You need to observe close loop opinion with transacting business reason. When there no any kind of interaction or observation, these any variable talks to these any but nothing reflected that indeed contains. So that means they talk about global some of those they require like they mentioned any kind of strong fire like those things. Sometimes you are put Thank you. Thank you. I just want to directly let's see what can we want to see about. We try to know that in fact sex is not all the common so it has to be actually even if someone does desire an opportunity that we didn't so or what is the case of commercial sex workers? Then you don't see. If you don't, most of the time people actually want to refer to them in that particular context. They are going to refer to us. They are going to just need the money. Come to give me money. So they don't. Okay, one more question on the other side. When we talk about transactional sex, we are looking at it from the outside is fully actually so I read a message on my of this and says the article for the about the capacity of doing artificial sex marketing and investigation of findings report the same as the result of very so they can make a serious between sex the women the trust child to go and find
all of the massive abilities. So I think we should look at each transaction, people imagine just without involving areas, just
I have serious especially because that's nonsense and not trying to speak up. So I don't think you're speaking. I need to pay attention to your translation. Because a lot of things you're talking about by relating to commercial sexual, not transactional sex. There is straight, clear divide between commercial sexual, transactional sex, and private prostitution. So it's about training and all that. That's only after the commercial sexual. I'm not about to say. Please take a look at that. But my conception is all when I was fascinated about the fact that somebody who is in the law discussed matters of transactional sex. I find that very interesting. However, I think that she takes note of our positionality and show that it's not affecting our analysis of data that she has got to. Because she talked about the fact that this is not part of our course and all that. I think that is not entirely true. And to be because of our position as a non is affecting or clouding our vision of the data that she has got into account. Thank you.
And this panel continues. This panel continues the past flow. The panel continues as will 106 from 12 of